the moon, announcing the arrival. Somebody gets wow. More and more joining the. They're slowly joining. Well, family is soaring together. I met my first African born in Africa in 1974 in a place called Ipswich Town in England. And please, people, don't go off about, oh, we are all Africans. Yes, I know that, but I'm saying some of us are born in what is being referred to as a diaspora. You know, we might be born in Holland, Guyana, French Guyana, Dutch Guyana, Barbados, Trinidad, Tobago, Jamaica, Guadeloupe, you know, Puerto Rico, DR, Haiti. She was working at a hospital. She was a nurse from Zimbabwe, of all places. Lots of the African people I met, England, France, Belgium, were in the medical field. We talked to each other in a kind of distant manner. You know, who are you? Where are you from? And so. Say we ever talked to a Caucasian. And it was odd because I found myself saying, wanting to know about these people that I had never met, but know so much about. Because the British always, in the British schools, you learn everything about the empire, where they ruled and what they ruled over and how they did it. You know, it was like bragging rights. So I knew about Zimbabwe, I know about the place my own people came from, who we were. I learned that from my auntie who got passed down from her grandmother. I learned it from my uncle. He too learned it from elders in the family. I learned it from my dad, who one day him and my uncle him and his uncle actually sat me down and began to tell me family history. So that's how we learned it. Auntie, as I grew up, did the same things, you know. But I found myself wanting to know about these places because it's a difference between reading things in a book and hearing it, seeing the people who lived it, meeting the people who lived it. And I was thinking about that today, actually, when I was listening to a conversation, you know, about the differences between us, diasporans and people who were born, either traveled out or born and remained in Africa. I met people traveling, and I met people here in Africa. And one of the things I always come away with is that we knew French history, Dutch history, English history, whatever history, Portuguese history, Spanish history. We know more about Spain than we knew about each other. And that's the way it is still today. And that has always been a bone of contention with me, kind of like a thing that I kind of hate dwelling on, but it's there. It's like nagging, you know. See, the cloud, the density of the clouds now allowing the sun to come out again. But we need a serious education about each other. And it's funny how Africans have a lack of knowledge, most, about Africa. I met diasporans that knew more about Africa than Africans who know about themselves. They might know about, like in Gambia, you might meet Gambians, they know about all the tribal affiliations in Gambia and in Senegal. A few gone to Nigeria and Ghana and so forth, and they know about, you know. But that's it. But I've met people in America who kind of like cracked open my head and poured African knowledge of African history into it, beside what I know that the British taught me. And I remember going to this theater down in Brooklyn. They used to call it the Slave Theater. Thursday, Saturday, Dr. Ben, you know, oh man. The number of people, Francis Cressling, oh, the number of people who taught knowledge about where we were from, how we got here, and what we're going to have to do in the future. A lot of those people have now passed, now no longer with us. Well, they're with us, but yeah, I better not go there because a lot of people wouldn't understand it. Anyway, we need a serious education about each other. know about the history, about the land, about what the British did, the French did, Dutch, whatever colonizer came to Africa and the Caribbean and Asia, what they did, how they did it. And we knew what they said to the Africans about us and what they told us about the people who were living in Africa. But the funny thing is, during the last 60 years, when we all seem to got our independence all at once, and you have to study that process very carefully to see why we got independence. It wasn't just because everybody wanted to leave the British Empire or the French Empire. There was another man standing at the door who wanted empire. He wanted to take over empire. And he didn't just want to have divided between English and French and Dutch and German. He wanted to run empire. The other people could stay, but he was running empire. So the EU was formed, you know, these little subdivisions were formed throughout the world. And they began to put in place an economic, a corporate structure that existed in America since its beginning. Well, shoot, you can go back to the Dutch East Indian, West Indian Company. But now the corporate structure had the American military power behind it. Whereas the Dutch West Indian, East Indian, they had their own military. But 60 years after we all got independence, as they told us, we all were able to decide for ourselves, as they told us. This is the biggest, well, you guys know that already. I don't have to tell you, that was the biggest lie I ever told. Not one of them that they told us. None of us, African governments, very few of them have embarked on the education process. Say, hey, we have some brothers, sisters, we have family in this place called the Caribbean, in this place called Brazil, Central America, Chile, Mexico, Philippines, and China. We have, oh yes, there are black people in China, and Japan too. Anyway, one of the most powerful dynasties in China came from African heritage. Most of them did. Anyway, no process to educate us about each other. The Pan-Africans now started in like the 1900s. Like Eric Williams, people like that from the Caribbean, Marcus Garvey, people in W.E.B. Du Bois in the U.S. But they set up a process that brought Africans to the West and educated them about our history in the West. And started building a coalition with them. And when, as it began to get stronger, the U.S. says, no. Garvey taken out early, people like Malcolm X, Lumumba, Sankara, all taken out. And future African leaders were allowed to say, yeah, I'm a Pan-Africanist, but they weren't allowed to do what Pan-Africanists was supposed to do, which is educate, integrate, and build. And today, we are suffering because of that. You have the individuality that exists in the West, that they taught black people about individuality, but there's no such thing as individuality. You perish under individuality. If you see what Germany sacrificed and France sacrificed, all the European countries sacrificed to follow America into a war in Libya, when they destroyed Libya, destroyed Iraq, Iran. There's no individuality. It's group. But we still believe in this foolishness. And so you have a lot of speeches being made by the people who call themselves Pan-Africanists. And no action is done. No action is taken. The only person who really did something concrete, which was, in a way, he had his reason for doing it, or the people behind him had a reason for doing it, but there are also people who didn't want it done. Marcus Garvey, His Majesty from Ethiopia. I was gonna call it a different name, but nobody knows that name. Anyway, His Majesty, how they were Africa joining together was sabotaged. Africans from the diaspora coming back to Africa, sabotaged. But there ought to be a fight right now for education between us. Otherwise, we from the diaspora will come to Africa, know nothing about Africa, live and die here and don't know anything. And the Africans who we live among will know nothing about us. I would say less than 1% of Africans know about slavery. What extent, how it affected us, how it destroyed Africa. That's an education that we both need, well, Africa need. And then me, I need to know about the suffering that Africans suffer. I know a little bit, but need to know the totality of it. We are not going to rise up unless we have this done. A house must have a foundation. Our house must have a foundation that's built by us. And to have that foundation, we got to start out with the history. Anyway, have a great day wherever you are. Stay safe. Peace.